Okay, Bismillah, walhamdulillah, wassalat wassalam ala Rasulullah. Welcome to We Are All Okay Wednesday, back again after our break from Ramadan. We're up to the letter R. R is for resentful, when holding on to pain holds you back from peace. So our topic we will cover is resentment is a heavy load. Letting go isn't about I jumped the line. Resentment is a heavy load. It doesn't punish the one who hurt you. It weighs down your own heart and stills your joy. Forgiveness sets you free. Letting go isn't about excusing the wrong, but about freeing yourself to move forward with grace. Trust Allah with the outcome. When you leave justice to Allah and release resentment, you make space for healing, peace, and reward. Alhamdulillah. This is a We Are All Okay event, Abdul Bari. That's why it's shared in the We Are All Okay group. So, alhamdulillah, resentment. At times, we often feel resentful towards people because of the way they might be behaving towards us, or maybe the way they're not behaving towards us, meaning that, maybe it's that they're not showing up for us, or there's some sort of lacking in them. And so we have this feeling of resentment inside. And that's actually a really destructive sort of feeling. If you're feeling resentful, there's a mixture of feeling like you're a victim in the situation, which is not a very empowering way to be. But you're not just a victim, you're an angry victim, because the resentfulness kind of has a kind of angry tone to it. And so, of course, that kind of feeling is a heavy feeling. And when we carry that around, we're actually unlikely to see solutions to our situation. We're not likely to see the good in others. We will only see the deficiencies or the problems in them. And we'll keep expanding our evidence or collecting more evidence to support the fact that we're justified in feeling resentful. The sad thing is, and if we're talking about, for instance, a relationship like a marital relationship, which is an important one to, work on. Of course, we have to work on our ties of kinship as well. But those sorts of relationships, I lost the thread of what I was about to tell you about that. Resentment. When we're in that kind of resentment, we are still fighting for the relationship. When we start not resenting anymore and getting into disappointment, and then from disappointment getting into a state of not caring anymore, the relationship is dying. So one of the things to think about is when we're feeling that resentment is look at it as like a love letter from Allah, to look at how we're thinking about things, because it's how we're thinking about what's happening that is actually creating our resentful feelings. It's not actually the other person. It looks like it, and it looks like they need to change in order for us to feel better. But the truth is, we can feel better through thinking about it through a different lens. And that's what this class or this session is all about, is that different lens. So firstly, understanding, because when we're being like at somebody in a resentful way because we feel like they've let us down or they've harmed us in some way, in our minds it feels like we're punishing them because we're being cross or upset with them. Therefore it's like we're punishing them. The truth and the truth of it is, it's not punishing them at all. It's just weighing us down. We're only harming our own self when we're hanging on to things in this way. So it's stealing our own joy away. And so that comes to, well, the concept of forgiveness. Now, first of all, challenging ourselves to be sure that there is actually something to forgive, because sometimes we've interpreted a situation in a way where it looks like the other person has harmed us, when in fact, maybe they haven't. Maybe it's the way we're thinking about it that has caused us to see it as a form of harm. Or another example, because I was talking about negligence as well, and I have a personal example I can share of this. Um, so we have my grandson with us half the week. And I was getting very resentful towards my son because he wasn't showing up as the dad he ought to show up as. And so as a result, my grandson was becoming very clingy to me and much, much harder for me to manage. And so I became quite resentful. And then when I became resentful, I wasn't actually being the nice grandma he needed me to be either. So it was flowing onto him as well. So it wasn't just a burden for me, it was becoming a burden for him as a child, which is totally unfair. Now, my thinking was he should be showing up as a better dad, or he should be doing this, or he should be doing that. And that's where the resentful thinking was coming from. When in reality, when we finally had a conversation about what was going on, what I came to understand from what he told me was that the reason he had backed off or wasn't engaging with his son as much was because he was being rejected by his son. Unfortunately, he's being groomed by his mother to hate his father. And so my son had experienced a whole range of things that had really hurt him, or he had felt hurt by. Um, and so he had withdrawn, not because he was dropping his responsibility, but because he was feeling hurt. And as soon as I understood that, my resentment faded away and I had a whole lot of compassion for him. And then I was able to have a conversation with him. And then he was able to show up again in his son's life. And then my grandson was so much easier to manage. So see how in that scenario, this was the example of being resentful around perceived neglect. Um, it was my story and the way I was thinking about it that had me feeling like he was letting me down, and so I was resentful. And so then if I stayed in that state, I would feel like he owed me like an apology or to make up for it or something like that. And so we can believe that we can't forgive somebody because we've held onto a story that may not be the whole story. It might be our reality of the story, but it may not be the full story. So forgiveness is about setting us free. It's not about the other person at all. It's about letting go of that thinking around resentment. And it's not excusing the wrong. So, for instance, in that conversation, once my resentment dropped and compassion re-emerged for my son, I was actually able to say to him, but your son really needs you. Yes, I get it. That hurts and that's horrible, but we have to counter that with love. And so then he started showing up and he was able, and so I was able to share with him that it was not the right thing for him to be pulling away. And that's what happens when we're able to let go of the thinking that we're having, be open to the fact that maybe our perspective isn't the only perspective and isn't the only thing that is being experienced here, that there's a whole other reality to this situation. That helps us forgive, because why do we want to hold on to not forgiving? Because we feel like that person owes us something, or we can't forgive them until they apologize, or until something is rectified, or like all these conditions. We're only holding ourselves captive with those. We're not helping ourselves at all. So trusting Allah with the outcome, at the end of the day, if we get to the point where you don't have a conversation like I had with my son, that there isn't any kind of resolution to the situation. It is what it is. The only perspective you have is your perspective, which is one that comes with a whole bunch of resentment, is then just understanding that, well, okay, if they have oppressed me, if they have done wrong by me, at the end of the day, it's in Allah's hands and justice will prevail. That on the day of judgment, maybe we'll get some of their good deeds, or if they've run out of good deeds, maybe they'll take some of our bad deeds. So there's other perspectives or ways of looking at it that help us come to that state of forgiveness and freedom, that then makes space for us to come back to a place of peace, a place where we don't feel resentful. Now, on another note, because I was saying how resentment is like a love letter about how we're thinking about things. Resentment can also, if we reflect deeply, be letting us know that there's somewhere where we're not showing up properly. And in the way that I mean is that we may not be showing up in the relationship where we are standing our ground when something's not okay. We're not setting a limit when we need to set a limit. We're not speaking up. And so we're getting resentful at them for putting us in the position. But the reality is the feeling is actually coming from the fact that we don't feel capable or haven't been able to stand our ground and speak up in a way that is needed in that situation. And so that is like a love letter saying it's probably important for us to get support ourselves in how do we become capable of setting limits, of speaking up when it's needed. Because as it says in the hadith, when we see something wrong, we're meant to change it with our hand. If we can't change it with our hand, we change it with our tongue. And if we can't change it with our tongue, we hate it in our heart. And that is the weakest level of faith, right? So we want to become a strong Muslim, because also in another hadith it says a strong Muslim is better than a weak Muslim, even though there's good in both. So we want to become a stronger Muslim, one who can say, hey, that's not okay, or one that can, set a limit, or one that can speak up and say, when you behave like that, I feel this, or it looks like this to me. So being able to have a conversation like I had with my son from a wise place, where it's like I was actually able to explain to him, I said, do you understand that when this is all happening, this is happening for me, and this is happening for me, and this happening for me, and then I start to feel quite resentful. I was able to express my perspective. Does he understand it? I don't know. I don't need him to understand it. I just need him to understand that there's more than just his perspective in the equation, which he did, because change was very evident very soon afterwards. So I hope this has put a bit of a spin on resentment in a way where you can look at it in a new light as, okay, I'm feeling resentful, and reflecting on, is there a message for me in this? Am I not showing up in a way that I'm meant to be showing up? Am I thinking about this in a way that is harming me? And is there another way I can think about it that is more helpful? And this can help us come out of that state of resentment, inshallah. So we have 13 minutes left for me to answer any questions that you might have around this. And if there's something I said that you're not sure of, or you notice yourself going, yeah, but tell me what the yeah, but is. Challenge me with the yeah, but, and let me see if I can explain things in a way that will help you see it despite the yeah, but. So does anyone have a question? You're welcome to type it in the chat or come on the microphone. Don't feel shy. Okay, let me ask a different question since we don't have anyone coming forth with questions. Now that I've shared this with you, think back to the last time you had resentful feelings coming up. I don't have to look back very far because I just told you about a story that's only just rectified itself in the last couple of weeks. It happens to the best of us that we will have resentful thinking come up and feel resentful. Okay, so you've connected back with that. Now that you've heard what I've heard, does that change anything about what you see about that situation that you had before? Maybe you can just type yes or no in the chat for me so I know that you're doing the reflection and thinking about it. Does what I shared change your perspective on that situation that you felt resentful around? I'm not seeing many sharing. No worries, Aisha. Okay, we've got a question. How do we move forward from these feelings? So I did just offer some questions you can ask yourself. Interesting, it's very powerful to ask ourselves questions because as much as when someone asks us a question, if we ask ourselves a question, our mind wants to figure out the answer. So if you ask yourself the question, is there something in this that is telling me that there's a place where I'm not showing up the way I need to show up? Is an excellent question because it starts with being accountable ourselves first. So is it something where we're not speaking up or setting a limit around it, and so we're feeling resentful because the other person's behaving that way, but when reality we've allowed them to do that because we're not setting the limits or speaking up, right? We're not enjoining the good or forbidding the evil. So that's the first question that can help get out of that angry victim mode of resentment into curiosity of what does it mean that I'm having that feeling? Not what am I thinking that's making me feel that way? It's actually a different question. It's what does it mean that I'm feeling that way? Does it mean that I'm not showing up? Or does it mean that the perspective I'm looking at things is causing me harm? How can I look at it from a different perspective? From the perspective that the outcome is in Allah's hands, from the perspective that if there's something where you have been oppressed by someone, that at the end of the day, even if it's not rectified in this dunya, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will rectify all the affairs in the akhirah. And so it's like, okay, I don't have to wait to feel better until there is some resolution in this life, because there may not be a resolution in this life. There will be a resolution in the hereafter. And, remembering that forgiveness doesn't mean that we're saying what they did was right or it was okay. It may not be. Forgiveness is about letting go from our own heart so that we can move forward with peace. Yes, Abdul Bari.
Yeah, I think, mashallah, jazakallah khairan for the topic. I think the first thing that comes to mind when we're talking about resentment is that for some reason, when we have resentment towards somebody else, it's like we're punishing them. Well,
Yeah.
in fact, we're not punishing them. It's us. It's like uh, drinking the poison and thinking that they will be harmed. It's us actually who are the most harmed by it.
Yep.
And I think, subhanAllah, once you shift the mindset of like, because I think there's also a false concept of like, if you forgive somebody, then that seems weak, at least in some cultures and stuff like that. But actually, it's not a sign of weakness because if you look at it like I'm forgiving this person because I want Allah to forgive me, then that's a whole mindset shift. Then like, okay, I'm forgiving this person and I might be seen weak. So it's like, what? Why are you forgiving this person for? Is it for Allah or is it for that person? And I think just having that mindset shift makes a huge change.
Absolutely. And in fact, you could argue that when you might have deeply hurt feelings going on, forgiving somebody takes a lot of strength and courage. So it's actually shows strength of character, to be able to be forgiving.
Exactly. And then I think it's a hadith or the I'm paraphrasing the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, where he said that the strength and the power of a man is not in him like being physically strong or kind of being angry, but the strength is that if somebody wronged them, then they are merciful towards them or something along those lines. But I remember hearing this hadith and I was like, that's very powerful.
Yes, yes, exactly. So we want to take feelings like resentment as an indicator that something's going on, not as a means. And you were right when you said about we think that by holding on to this resentment, it's some form of punishment for them. If we're in that mindset, guess what sort of behavior comes from us? Really passive aggressive behavior, which is not helpful at all. It does not move the relationship forward. In fact, it makes matters worse. Being passive aggressive is a shocking way of handling things, but that's often what we resort to if we're feeling resentful. And we feel justified in it. Like we feel like, well, it's justified because they did this or they didn't do this, right? We justify it. And that's another clue, I guess, if you feel trapped in that feeling, is to see if is just to witness whether you're justifying it somehow, because that's just a barrier to yourself, not to the other person. That's just hindering yourself. SubhanAllah. All right, we have to wrap up exactly on time because there's a session straight after this one. So I would love to hear a takeaway from somebody, or you could type a takeaway quickly from what you got from this session. Was there something that you found helpful in what you heard today? Anyone want to jump on the mic and share? You can type it as well if you like. All quiet on the Western Front, as they say. Well, I do hope that you have found the topic beneficial. And if you did miss the beginning, it should be uploaded sometime by the end of the day, Australian time. So in the next, I suppose, 9 or 10 hours, somewhere along the line, it will be uploaded. And so you can listen from the beginning. Alhamdulillah. Daniela's takeaway is that forgiveness is tough sometimes, but it gives us a freedom from within. Beautiful. It's very true. Alhamdulillah. Well, I look forward to seeing you next week with the letter S, because that comes after R. Can't remember what emotion it is connected to. It might be stress, maybe that comes to mind, but I haven't looked it up. So you'll have to come and find out for a surprise what the letter S emotion is that we're doing next week, inshallah, at the same time in the same place. Sadness, is it? Okay. Thank you, Abdul Bari. It's sadness next week instead of stress. I think we just did overwhelm for O's. That's probably why I didn't do stress for S. Awesome. See you next week, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Subhanaka Allahumma bihamdika shada la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.